Yeah, I'm hearing of a few individuals talking about these sorts of things, on the sidelines or whispers of it. Well, can we even bring some of those individuals together and let's talk about it together louder, right? So again, this podcast hosting some guests here is one of those opportunities. Can we host more people together to talk more about that sort of all are yours worldview, right? And what does that look like? What does that mean? Hello and welcome to All Are Yours. Both of us are back. We're ready. We are ready to talk.
Like, I have been waiting for this opportunity. I have basically not even used any words
Uh,
since we last recorded,
there you
just
go.
saving them up for today.
Storing them up. Yeah, all that kinetic energy is getting built up and it's got to go somewhere. So here we
Yeah.
go. Get ready, people.
It's like
Exciting episode.
new wine in old wineskins is going to burst.
There you go. That's right. Yeah. Yes. Um, all right. Well, teaser wise, something we've been thinking about, and even the whole idea of the All Are Yours podcast. We did talk a little bit about this when we came out on video, when we released on video. Like, why are we doing that?
We're like all over YouTube at
It's
this
true.
point.
Yeah, yeah, viral. There you go. Um,
I have subscribed to our YouTube channel in Readwise.
okay.
And so it shows me every time a new short comes out. I mean, obviously the big episode as well,
Yeah, yeah.
because I want to know what the robots are selecting
There you
and
go.
then posting on our behalf for those little clips
That's right.
that are coming out in between the massive
There.
hour-long specials that we do.
That's right.
But that's kind of it. So yeah, I have been seeing how prolific our YouTube channel really is, thanks to the robots.
Yeah, it's busy. Yeah, we have a person who's managing the robots
Yeah.
and releasing those shorts and the clips, and so getting the stuff out there. So if you're not subscribed, subscribe. There you go. Here's our, us following the advice that the YouTube masters say. Like and subscribe. It'll help the robots do their work.
Yeah.
There you go. But
Yeah. So we come out on video is your point.
correct.
Back when we came out on video, that was where we were at until I rudely interrupted us.
Yeah. And one of the things we're talking about when we're coming out on video is, one of the ideas, one of the things we're trying to do is to make more friends. We'd like more people to play with in that way. And so I do think we have, overlap across different spheres and spheres of thought, maybe, with different sorts of people. And sometimes it's hard to find people that we agree with on all the areas. And so we end up having to agree and disagree and live in that kind of tension with all sorts of people, which is the only way to live.
Yeah. I mean, we could actually, if we took a step up just for a second, like in terms of from the 5,000 foot view to the 10,000 foot view here. Yeah, I mean, because the All Are Yours podcast is not necessarily, it's not the Trinity Evangel Church podcast, though both you and I are pastors at Trinity Evangel Church, and our worship at Trinity Evangel Church and the doctrine, the theology that we understand and that we teach, that we're trying to make disciples of, that Jesus is Lord and therefore all are yours because we are Christ and Christ is God. So, I mean, that is the passage. This podcast, though, while primarily thinking that it would be an encouragement to our church people, because one of the options for trying to make more friends would be for our church to try to find a denomination to join. That would be a way to make connections. And one of our challenges is we're not necessarily convinced as a church that denominations are the way to go. We're not obviously capital P Presbyterian, so we're not part of a presbytery that then has, different regional connections or a national connection or things like that. So, yeah, we want to make more friends, but that's not just on the church side. And so, because we're also concerned with even the educational institutions, all are yours, we talk about Comfort College or Evangel Classical School. We've talked about homeschooling, private Christian schooling, even in one of our previous episodes. We've talked about Comfort College in previous episodes. Like, these are also very particular interests that we have, let alone just the Kuyperian business things. I mean, we've tried on purpose to talk about different spheres.
Mm-hmm.
And, so on the church sphere, we could join a denomination. There's not really even one that I think we'd be super excited about participating in that I know about, at least at the moment. But we'd love to have more friendships with other churches
Mm-hmm.
to the degree that we can even partner with them maybe in some things. Yeah. Schools, Evangel Classical School is part of the Association of Classical and Christian Schools, and we do have some sister schools that are in Western Washington that our headmaster has some kind of connection with at different events, and our teachers get training with them at some different events. Comfort College is its own kind of animal. So in some ways, it's almost like maybe this particular avenue, not just podcast, but this idea is maybe one of the things that could actually help us make some of those network connections,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to depending on the church to make the connections or the schools to make the connections or, the business owners or your business trying to make those connections. So maybe this even, not that this podcast or our glorious YouTube channel is like the hub, but some of the broad interests of all are yours could actually be a great excuse to reach out to other kind of people that, again, don't have to overlap with us 100% in any
Mm-hmm.
given sphere, but when it comes to some particulars, we could
Right.
make
Right.
more friends.
And this way, if we, sabotage our own reputation, we could still protect those of the institutions that we like. So it's just minding your name that's on the line there. No big deal.
This is like the firewall,
Mm-hmm.
this
There you
whole
go.
thing could burn down, but everything else is safe. Yeah, I like that.
That's right. There you go. Yeah, and I think there are a lot of benefits for sure to like I said, playing with more people. And even your point about not being a part of a denomination, that in itself probably lost a bunch of viewers right there. Like there are people who hold on to being a part of a denomination very, religiously. Um, it is of utmost importance, a priority, even to the point of the reason why there are so many problems in the church today is because churches are independent. Um, and yeah, there is some good points on that side as well. And I mean, even the discussion of Presbyterianism, that model versus a independent model. I mean, there were those kind of debates going on with the Westminster Divines, right? At the Westminster Assembly, there was a group of the divines who were independent and who wanted autonomy at the level of the local congregation. And then there were those who were Presbyterians, and a lot of them coming out of Scotland, even, and having that sort of approach. So this is not just some kind of non-denominational mega church new thing. Even that question, it was birthed right out of the Protestant Reformation. If
Sure.
you're going out of that one capital C Catholic Church, what does that model look like? And so when they were trying to figure out what the national church for England would look like, they had these kind of questions as well. And so
One of our favorite Presbyterian churches in Tacoma is an independent Presbyterian church,
Look at that.
and
Look
they
at
have
that.
been independent. I forget exactly how long, but it could actually be 10 or 20 years if I remember correctly.
Okay.
And like that is funny.
Yeah.
It's the same kind of funny to certain people online. I mean, people online, they fuss or fight about whatever. But just like there are people who say dispensationalists cannot be reformed in any meaningful sense whatsoever, being reformed, capital R, means something distinct from dispensationalism,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. They would also say you can't be a Presbyterian church and be independent. And
Mm-hmm.
yet, I mean, we know of one.
Yeah, it exists.
Yeah, we've been there multiple times. We like them a lot. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, exactly right. Yeah. So, and the worldview that we expound, promote, believe in, um, you know, maybe could be taglined even with that "all are yours," right? If there was maybe some kind of tagline for that, and what we mean by that, we've talked about here as well. But we've called it different things as well. Something like Kuyperian dispensationalists, right? What does that even mean? What does that look like? Does that kind of creature exist out there? Well, we have found others like us. There are not many. Um, and we would like to find more. We'd like to encourage those who do have that kind of understanding when it comes to both scripture, the word, and the world, and how to live out scripture, live out the word in the world. What does that look like? We do actually think that our views are consistent from what we from the position that we're looking at it, right? And so even encouraging others with those views of how to answer certain questions, or how to even for yourself, is some of the stuff that we like to talk about and want to talk about more.
Which is not, and not trying to be pokey whatsoever, but like we're talking about worldview, doing different things in the world, not as post-millennialists.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't remember, and I'm hoping that you do. Like, have we put the ball up on the tee for you to hit the parable of the minas on the All Are Yours podcast?
I don't think so.
Because that parable is a great. It's another specific way to talk about why this is important for us, even though we're dispensationalists, understanding, anticipating that all the things in the world are not going to get made right until Jesus returns first.
Mm-hmm.
And then he starts establishing righteousness on earth in his kingdom, not that we are doing that first before he comes back.
Mm-hmm.
So the parable of the minas is another doorway into that understanding of why we can care,
Right,
and still think we need Jesus to come back before we're going to see some of the successes that are actually promised to people who confess that Jesus is Lord. So I mean, you
right.
wanna
Yeah.
rant about the parable for
Oh, I
a
love it.
bit?
Yeah, it's my favorite one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Recently somebody said that I could probably draw anything back to the parable of the minas. So there you go.
It's the last, I mean, this is not going to steal any of your thunder, but I think even in reading that Good of Affluence book,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the last parable before then Passion Week.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah.
the last teaching parable that Jesus gives before the final week and before his death and resurrection. So I mean,
Yeah.
the parable itself has a lot of great things in it, which you can rant about, but even its placement is intended to get us to think a particular way, so with this kind of mindset that you're going to
Right.
describe, right before Jesus died, and then obviously his resurrection. So
Right. Exactly.
Luke
Right.
19, hit us.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I mean I talk to different whether it's productivity type people, or even reading productivity books, or podcasts, or I've had some opportunity to talk to some productivity coaches, and a lot of them start with you want to start with the end in mind. and kind of think about the legacy that you're going to leave, and how people after you are going to think about you and what you did, and what you were able to accomplish, or what you did for them with the relationships you left.
When you are done.
That's right, when you're done, right?
Right.
So write your own obituary and then live that out. And that's kind of the starting point. um and I have no interest in approaching it that way. I mean, I get what they're saying, um and I want to approach it like a Christian and live this life out, not by looking in the rear view mirror, seeing what's behind me, but I want to live this life for the next life. And so the parable of the minas presents our life here as even a training ground or a probation period to be able to bring a return to the master while he is conquering his kingdom, and then be set up to rule with the authority that the master gives us. Like, I'm after those 10
Yeah, when
cities
he returns.
when he
When he
returns.
comes back to find out what we've done with what he's given us in this time, when he returns and then gives us the rewards,
Exactly
the
right.
work
Yeah.
to do in his kingdom, when he
Right.
comes back, what we
That's
have
right.
done now will be in some measure related to what responsibility he gives us going forward.
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
not that we're done.
Exactly
Yeah.
right. Yeah. And so, I mean, it's similar to the parable of the talents, but one of the key differences is in the talents, each servant received a different measure of talents. So 1, 2, 5. But they brought back the same percentage return. So they all either 2x'd or 1x'd in that way, where he didn't bring anything back, or the other ones doubled the investment. Where in the minas, each servant got 1 mina, and they brought back a different level of return. So somebody, 4x'd it, somebody 10x'd it. Um, and so to be able to utilize the resources, opportunities, gifts, abilities at your disposal to bring the greatest return back to the master, so that he can set you up for um, as much blessing and as much even authority and rule in the new heavens and new earth after his return, is the kind of life that we want to live. And that is a sort of life that is um, heavenly minded for the earth's good, in that way, where you're thinking about the future and you're thinking about what's next. And in that thought process, you're applying yourself here and now. You're not just rearranging furniture on the Titanic. You are trying to bring a real, legitimate return, and whatever sphere you're in. If it's business, if you're in your family, with your wife, with your kids, in your church. If you're in, maybe not as a business owner, but as a worker in a business, you're still involved in that work. Whether you're in some kind of institution, educational institution, with science, with art, whatever that return is what you're after. And so that all are yours mindset, because all of those spheres belong to Christ. Christ is Lord over them all. We don't have to use them as just a means to an end, like we've talked about here before, but the return there is actually being productive in those spheres, bringing the return that is relevant to whatever area you're involved in. And so that's some of that mindset, even coming out of that parable of the minas.
Yeah, so the persons are not done when their life on earth in this current age is done. That person is not done. So even if you heard, sometimes dispensationalists get tagged as saying things like, it's all going to burn. And that's their justification. That's their excuse for why, the only things that matter right now are evangelism,
Hmm.
is trying to get as many souls saved so that they can go to heaven, because it's all going to burn. And The parable of the minas in particular. I mean, there are other parts as well that should get us to the same purpose of living here. But the parable of the minas says, okay, well, even if the work that you were doing that brought about the 10x on your mina, even if that particular system or structure or business does burn or get destroyed, shaken and not the same, well, the person still continues, and the person's responsibility taking actually can increase. And with glorified bodies, we'll be even more capable of being able to honor the Lord and see all that is His that He gives to us to work with. So even if a bunch of the things in the current world system break down or do burn, are destroyed, the persons and their capabilities, they are going to get rewarded going forward. The persons are going to last.
Right.
They're like, try to emphasize, persons are not done when this current life that they have is done. So that should really connect with lots of other people who feel like, it's a dualistic kind of lie that a lot of people get sucked into for a variety of reasons, probably. But this is the kind of worldview that is fitting for Christians of any millennial position, including the Christians that do already have more of a dispensational premillennial view, even historic premill to some extent. Like, this is actually something worth sharing, and a lot of overlap with how then our lives look, what we invest in, our time, our energy, let alone our money, that we're actually trying to honor the Lord here, not just get out of here.
Right. Right.
And all are yours really is intended to hook us into that kind of mindset.
Right. Well, and
Parable of the Minas definitely should encourage that even more. Yeah.
yeah. Well, when in 1 Corinthians 15, Paul is talking about the resurrection and the future glory, right? Some of the examples or metaphors that he's bringing in is like a seed that is planted and dies, and then is rebirthed or is resurrected into a different type of glory, but it's still all rooted in that seed, right? He talks about the different lights of glory as well in that way. Um, and so, even in that death and resurrection, I want to be as potent of a seed being put into the ground as I can be, as God would allow me to be, so that I could have as much glory in the life to come as God would give me. I don't want to be a weak, unhealthy seed that is maybe lukewarm in that way, mixing the analogies. But I want to be a seed that ran by faith and is potent and is as ready as can be for the work that is to come in the next life. And even the reward, it seems like, is connected, is relevant to the work we were doing here in some way, in some capacity. And so even the work that we have, you're talking about it burning. Well, burning isn't always destructive. Burning is also cleansing. It's purifying. And the Bible does talk about fire in that way as well. We are refined in that, and for our work in this world, in this earth, to also be refined through that fire, for the thorns and thistles and weeds to burn away, and to be what is left is what is only productive, what is only fruitful, and for us to, again, not escape the earth, but be able to return with Christ and build and rule and reign, and be as productive as can be in the new heavens and new earth. So, again, this kind of mindset for the future, even within a dispensational framework, does not make this life here and now irrelevant. It makes it more relevant. Um, it will be cleansed, it will be purified, I will be resurrected, and all of those things will be put together for me to then bring the greatest return that I could bring in the new heavens and earth. That's not disconnected from what I'm doing here and now.
Yeah. So not that this work is not useless. It's not vain. If the end of 1 Corinthians 15 is also correct, your labor in the Lord is not in vain.
Mm-hmm.
So that does not seem to require. I don't think that's saying your labor is when you're a full-time vocational missionary or when you spend 40 hours a week leading Bible studies only. That labor is not in vain.
Mm-hmm.
Seems like it'd be whatever your labor is, as long as you're doing it in the Lord. Well, then that's not in vain. It's not limited to a particular vocation. And, the group of Christians that we most initially kind of are overlapping with tend to have not been taught that. They tend to have been more of the we're trying to just get out of here.
Right.
We're waiting for the rapture. I think it was in one of the earlier episodes of All of Yours, where we even picked on the idea of dispensationalist Bible colleges not building any of their buildings in brick because
Mm-hmm.
it's not going to last.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
When we are intentionally trying to fight against that mindset that these things are useless, that they actually not only can be and are honoring to the Lord, but they're part of preparing us to do even more. Like you said, not when our lives are done, even if we're looking at when our lives are done in this way,
Right.
before our resurrection. So trying to encourage more Christians who are currently still maybe in positions like we have been in, and make some more friends
Mm-hmm.
who can continue to extend that, and including, I forget the first person that I ever heard kind of ask it this way. Christians, so often we only know how to lose, but
Mm-hmm.
what if we did actually make some progress, succeed in some spheres, make profits in some way? Like in the parable of the minas, there was
Mm-hmm.
actually some temporal success
Mm-hmm.
that increased the muscles, so to speak, of those servants so that they could carry more in the resurrection.
Right. Right.
And we're actually trying to succeed and turn a profit, even if that profit doesn't always look like the world would define it.
Mm-hmm.
Who says it wouldn't look like the world would define it sometimes?
Mm-hmm.
So it's actually a lot of discouraged Christians who feel like their labor is in vain. And we're trying to get this message out.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I think maybe three groupings of like overlap that we have with other types of believers or Christians. And the first one is um, the sort of dispensationalists who we share a hermeneutic with, who we share an eschatology with. We share this idea of how to approach the Bible. We share that Israel and the church are distinct. There is distinction there, and so maybe even a lot of that is coming out of. I think maybe there is even within a dispensational camp, it's very broad, but maybe more so the TMS type of dispensationalist, right, as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to the, if I could say loosely, the non-Bible reading dispensationalist, but just more of like a nominal one. That's just kind of all they know. But the Dispy who is coming out of that John MacArthur type of camp that loves the Bible, reads the Bible. The Bible is a foundation to a lot of what they do, a lot of what they believe and say and think. And we want to encourage that type of Christian to then apply the Bible in these different areas, right? What does the Bible actually say for us to do, how we are to live? When the Bible says, in a way, get out of just the Bible and go live that out.
Yeah. So I know that you're still on category number one, but
Mm-hmm.
like, uh, we've talked about before, the epistolary evangelicals, who are pretty much, they are taking the Bible seriously, but the parts of the Bible that they take functionally more seriously are the letters from the apostles,
Hmm.
which those are good letters. They're crucial, obviously inspired kind of things.
We like them.
Yes, we're not trying to get rid of them. However, the apostles had a lot of assumptions that they didn't need to rewrite because of what they understood from Old Testament things. Uh, think Psalms or even early parts of Genesis. Like, they weren't rewriting some of those things because what they were writing to was a new situation with churches,
Hmm.
which was not in the Old Testament. I get that that's fighting words for different groups of people to say that, the church was not in the Old Testament.
We're trying to make friends, John.
Yeah. That said, the epistles are great. They are aimed to how you behave in the church, which is good, but how we behave in the church is not the only sphere in which we're to behave on the earth. And again, like you're saying, the people who take the Bible seriously need to take all of the Bible seriously.
Hmm.
And that includes recognizing what God takes seriously about the blessings he gives temporally.
Hmm.
Those aren't the only kind of blessings that he gives. The epistles are much more concerned with the spiritual blessings that he gives, which are also amazing in Christ. But some of what that enables us to do with spiritual blessings is to genuinely appreciate and use the temporal blessings.
Hmm.
So dissies have been bad
Hmm.
at again, at least in function. They wouldn't state this in the confession of their hermeneutic, but they've been actually bad at reading the other good things that God says there are.
Right. Well, and kind of maybe younger generation of dispies that come out of the TMS circles um, see that something is missing, something is not fully there. Um, and unfortunately, a lot of the times think that for them to get what is missing, they have to stop being dispensationalists. They have to
Mm-hmm.
stop reading the Bible in that way and become typologists or covenantalists, right? And so maybe this second group of our overlap is a certain kind of Kuyperian covey who is interested in living out this all are yours worldview with the things of earth and everything that's happening here and now. A lot of times those people are post mills. A lot of sometimes they're amils, um, uh, but they are trying to apply and live out this kind of blessing mindset. And so what we that is something we like about that circle, that group, that type of Christian. Uh, but we also want that approach, that worldview, to be able to be passed on to the next generation and the next generation after that, and so forth. And we think that what you need for that is a foundational consistency with the actual doctrine and how you live that out. So if your ultimate foundation is typology, and we've talked about this here before also, then a typology in the sense that the thing itself is just pointing to a spiritual thing. And so we have allegory. So a lot of what we read in the Bible, a lot of what we see in the world, a lot of how we interpret history is typologically or allegorically. And so then that is played out in a spiritual realm. Well, consistently wise, you wouldn't be able to live that out here and now where the physical things are just types of a spiritual reality. Um, we don't want to fall into that trap either. And so maybe those are two types of circles that we do have overlap with, but in neither circle do we have that full consistency that we're after, and we want to have more unity in that way.
And then was there a third group as well?
Right. And the third group then are people who maybe aren't even thinking about any of those things. Dispy, Covey, post mill, amill, pre mill, whatever. I'm just a practical evangelical. I care about cultural transformation. I care about maybe public theology. I want to apply the lordship of Christ in whatever way I understand that. But I see people who are in need. I think that business is run better when there's Christian morals involved, right? And so I'm not even sure about all of the uh, underlining foundations, doctrines, theology. I have more of a practical approach, and so we want to. We like that. We like people who are doing things and are maybe even effective in some ways. But again, we would like that to be more undergirded and strapped on for the long run. So those are kind of three groups that we find overlap with are Dispies, Kuiper Coveys, and these kind of cultural evangelicals or practical uh, evangelicals.
Yeah, I think that's good. Yeah, and how much creed does a Christian need to be a disciple? Well, on one hand, they don't need very much at all. I mean, they just need to confess with their mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe in their heart that God is raised him from the dead, and they'll be saved. So, boom.
Mm-hmm.
The super practical Christians who, are actually just trying to live it out and are less doctrinally or, propositionally interested.
Mm-hmm.
There are strengths to some of that, but it is harder in the third generation for them to know why they're doing it. It's not that example is not useless.
Mm-hmm.
Example is a powerful part of our passing on to the next generation how to live. So our kids in particular, they learn a lot of what to do by just watching us, regardless of what we say.
Mm-hmm.
That said, like in the Old Testament, multiple times, some of the practices that were required from Israel were intended to provoke questions from the kids.
Mm-hmm.
And then the instructions are, okay, so in the day when your kids ask you, well, why do we do this? Well, you were supposed to have an answer for that. You're supposed to be able to explain it. And that doesn't mean that every person needs to read 1,000-page theology books and have those definitions ready to go at a moment's notice. But in order to, we are also word people. And for as much overlap as we have with like you're describing, the faithful Christians who are trying to be salt and light, like good, to be able to pass that on, especially second, third, or beyond that sort of generations, there needs to be some outline, some statements that explain how it goes. Not exactly the same, but Scripture explains how to read creation. Can you learn a lot about God from creation? Absolutely. Do you need the Bible to explain some more specifics? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So we're actually supposed to understand and then pass on the teaching, not just understand and live out the practical obedience options.
Mm-hmm.
It is both. So truth and obedience. And part of our thing that we're trying to do is get people to think. Both you and I, it is funny when you started by saying, we're looking for some more friends, because that is completely true. And also kind of funny in another way to talk about it like that. Our social needs are not necessarily the same bucket size as various other people.
That's right. Exactly right.
Still, in terms of the coordinated work,
Right.
yes, we want more friends, not just co-belligerents. We want more allies.
Right.
And we want to be able to share some language about it as well. And that's part of why this podcast. Maybe there are other ways we could also try to get that language out there.
Yes, that's right. Right. To communicate that sort of vision, right? And
Yeah.
so again, when we're talking about we're looking for friends, I mean, maybe Sean and I particularly are or are not. But our people, the people who are with us, right? We have other people who like friends even more than we do,
Mm.
um, and so we're thinking about all of that, and to be able to make more connections and get more uh, uh, kind of this intertwining web of relationships is what we're trying to build more and more. And yes, clearly communicating that vision, what that looks like, what is that all our years vision, is what we want to do more of. Um, and so, one of the ideas that we're toying with, playing with, exploring is to be able to host an all our years conference.
A conference? What?
Boom. Yes, because we don't think there are enough. We think there are not enough conferences.
Because when Jesus told the 11,
That's
because
right.
Judas had already hung himself, when Jesus gave the Great Commission to the rest of the 11, he was thinking about flying in celebrity pastors for
That's
multiple
exactly right.
conferences on an annual basis. Yeah.
That's right.
Charging exorbitant ticket prices so that the speakers could ride around in black SUVs, maybe even with a driver.
You could pay more to have dinner with the speakers. So
VIP
that's right.
discipleship.
That's exactly right. So um
Or
that
that's not exactly, again, our conference is valuable. I have actually really benefited from the time spent with men in particular. It was like a 10-year period of time or so when I'd try to take 1 to 10 other guys down to the Shepherds Conference. And, the sessions themselves at the time in particular, they were fine. Like, I mean, we got orthodoxy. Nobody was slaying other people in the spirit at a Grace Community Church John MacArthur Shepherds Conference. So, I mean, we got Bible, good theology, and something then to talk about with the other guys. But in some ways, it was just an excuse to go be together for a few days.
mhm.
And then the messages gave us things that we could, either complain about or constructively criticize or speak about how we were edified. So, in some ways, the liturgy of the conference is more important than any given particular talk.
Mhm.
Like the talks get recorded, and they can be used in an ongoing way or shared even further, obviously, than the people who can be there. But there's something about seeing other people and participating with them and getting that sort of encouragement that the talks, the sessions themselves are just a small part of.
Mhm.
And, church, obviously, we're doing that with a local body on a weekly basis. And the words that are said are part of the food that God gives to his people, even though they can be reading the Bible for themselves, presumably throughout the week. But a conference is intended to be then some more of that sort of sharing, but more broadly,
Mhm.
like we've been trying to talk about in this episode,
Right.
where
Right.
we are trying to kind of open up our surface area to see if there can be some more connections, some more docking together, so to
Mhm.
speak, of trying to do the work.
Right.
Whether that's Western Washington specific, I mean, obviously that's our geographical location,
Mhm.
but there's some intent to make that more awesome because that's where we live.
Mhm.
But also, we're not opposed to making it more awesome as kind of a retreat destination.
Mhm.
Marysville as a come for a weekend kind of
Mhm.
thing, and get filled up and excited and encouraged to go back to your home
Mhm.
and do it as well. Is that a required thing? Like, is there a verse that requires that? No. Is that a spiritual / worldview opportunity to encourage other people like that? Seems like it.
Right. Yeah.
And because so Shepherd's Conference, uh, you know, that sort of dispensationalist group, well, I think went in your group number one that we have overlap with.
hmm
Well, and Shepherd's Conference was intended more for pastors. So it was intended to encourage pastors for the work in the church. And good. But that meant that there wasn't encouragement for business owners.
hmm
So there's a business makers network, that are you actually a member in that, or at least you participated in
Yeah.
some of the
Participated.
things?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's also good, but that would be more the Kyperian Covey group.
hmm
So you're probably not getting a lot of dispensationalists going to that.
hmm
So to have something that would, overlap all those categories that you described
Right.
is not a thing that we currently know that's happening somewhere.
Right. Right.
So it's not like we are just trying to replicate
hmm
something that we think is good. We're actually kind of talking about something that nobody else at least is making those connections together.
Right, right, yeah. Yeah, I'm hearing of a few individuals talking about these sorts of things, on the sidelines or whispers of it. Um, and well, can we even bring some of those individuals together and let's talk about it together louder, right? So again, this podcast hosting some guests here is one of those opportunities. Can we host more people together to talk more about that sort of all are yours worldview, right? And what does that look like? What does that mean? Another phrase that we've used, at TEC is to have a kind of jealous ability, even a jealousable mood, so to speak, right? So that has to do with flavor, with taste, with beauty, with hospitality. How do we communicate and promote that more as well? How do we care enough about things that other people also want to care about these things, right?
And we can't do that just in two dimensions. Or
Right.
what do they even count? If you're listening to this podcast just via audio, what dimension is that? That's just one?
That's just the digital. Yeah, that's the one and zeros.
Yeah, because video is two dimensions.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah.
But so it's harder
hmm
to as good looking as we are
That's right.
and as much fun as we make talking about these things sound, our embodied jealous ability is very limited in this format.
hmm
Is it a useful format? Absolutely. All are yours. But potentially having a thing where, you've actually got the three dimensions involved,
hmm
the taste, the beauty. And I mean, depending on where we host our conference, depending on, also it has to, if we pull something like this off, you got to start somewhere before you can iterate to make it even more jealousable and
hmm
more hospitable and more beautiful. Our current people, like at TEC or ECS in particular, they actually do a pretty good job, depending on who we can get to help us set a thing like this up. They actually do a great job of making it as tasty and as adorned as it
hmm
can be. But that's part of the thing. Like Baptist dispensationalists are known for potlucks. They're not necessarily known for beauty.
Yeah. No good. Yeah.
Yeah. And jealous ability, which comes from the Romans chapter 11, where God is blessing his people and in particular blessing Gentiles in such a way that the Jews would then be provoked to jealousy.
hmm
And probably that works until the fullness of the Gentiles comes in on its way to then God using the blessings to Gentiles to provoke Israel to a repentance at the right time. But yeah, that jealous ability is not just because we have really good two-dimensional Bible studies.
hmm
That's because we can live it out. And some kind of planned path crossing time
hmm
where
Right.
we could share in an embodied way
Mhm.
some of these ideas. So again, talks are an orienting thing. Talks
Mhm.
are part of it, but there's more that potentially we could do than just talk. Because if it was
Right.
just talking, okay, well, we just keep doing this.
Mhm.
But actually getting, more than audience, but getting some like-minded people to overlap even in their lunchtime or
Right.
whatever.
Right.
Like that is a kind of thing that this format can't do.
Right. Exactly right. Well, I mean, even you know, God's instituted feasts had that idea as well, where even, he would command men to pilgrimage together in order to have celebrations, right? To have uh, um, something happening that people are coming to. They're traveling for it as well. And so there is that kind of idea. So um, it's not all bad. God didn't think so.
Right.
But then one of the maybe a fuller explanation of some of the worldview, and these are also words that we've talked about before, um, of what do we mean by this kind of all our years worldview, or maybe even Kuiper Dispy foundations that I think we've maybe addressed but haven't fleshed out. And this is some of the sorts of topics that we want to invite others to discuss with us and even help promote, help talk about. So the first one is we want the foundation of confidence, so being full of faith, right? Um, and this is
Viva fide.
correct. Viva fide. That's the banner. That's right. Live by faith. Um, and so even that kind of uh, mm, foundation, that kind of fuel for everything that we do. And yeah, that the mindset that a lot of dispies have, frankly, lacks a lot of faith, right? Having the starting point being we lose down here, or it's all going to burn anyway, or we're just rearranging furniture on the Titanic. Well, that lacks faith. That lacks pursuit. Um, so that's not what we want. We want more confidence, and so faith looks like confidence, or confidence meaning with faith. So we want to promote more of that with our people.
Yeah. And that is a thing that includes words, but it also includes presence.
Hmm.
So confidence can be shared communally as opposed to you just read a rousing story.
Right.
So faith is individual, yes. In fact, unless an individual has faith, himself, herself, whatever, uh, can't be saved. But there is a kind of group, corporate body like faith, a kind of presence of that courage, boldness, heart, nerve,
Hmm.
um, that happens together, not just individually. And it happens not just from words, but it happens from relationship.
Hmm.
So that is shared. And it's harder. The illustration of the individual charcoal briquette.
Hmm.
You can light an individual charcoal. You can probably cook something small over one teeny Bixford briquette. But when you've got a group of them together, well, then it lasts longer, gets hotter. You know, there's not just a protection that the center briquettes experience.
Hmm.
There's actually more cooking that's happening, when they're all combined together. So that confidence is not just me reading a great poem
Hmm.
and, being excited for the day. It's actually something that we want to see shared,
Hmm.
progress and joy of faith. That confidence is strangely lacking among Christians,
Right.
whose one of our labels is believers.
Right. Right. Yeah.
And we have a hard time continuing to live out the believing.
Hmm. Yeah. The next part I want to promote is for people to be consistent, right? And so again, same with those the three groups that we talked about, Dispies, Kuiper Coveys, or even just practical evangelicals. We want consistency with words and actions. We want for the words to mean what they say, and then for people actually to mean what they say by going and doing it, right? And so where we see inconsistency, we think that's not good. And not all inconsistency is equally bad. I would rather have one type of inconsistency versus another type. But I would even more have consistency that is good all around.
Yeah, and more than just consistent with the Westminster Confession.
Correct. Yes, that's right.
Yeah, is the Westminster Confession, as much as I can get edified from so much of Westminstery things, functionally that becomes the authority sometimes. And so in discussions with certain Kuyperian Covey groups, who would criticize dispensationalists for not being consistent. Well, I mean, it's hard sometimes to not think that the standard of defining consistency there is Westminsterian instead of, the Bible. And I get that those are fighting words, but we are happy talking about that and want to be consistent wherever then that leads us. Like whatever the conclusion is of what is right, what is true, well, that's what we want. So we happen to think that there are some labels that more accurately describe those conclusions than others, but we're not just trying to immediately eliminate certain groups of people. We're trying to get everybody to be honest with how they're coming to their understanding and be as consistent as possible, not just like you said in the sentences, the words, but even then how we live out what we say, the words are that we've come to. And a dualistic dispy is, we think, massively inconsistent.
Right.
Even if their understanding of Old Testament and New Testament fits the right way. Their behavior is not consistent with that hermeneutic. So all kinds of ways to be inconsistent.
Right.
It's just a passion to try to get consistent for us. Yeah.
The third one is to be comprehensive. So again, all the things Christ cares about on earth and for eternity. And so all are yours, and we want Christians to have that kind of approach, mindset, that kind of palette for it to be comprehensive, covering a lot of ground in that way.
So you're saying not just my quiet time in the morning before.
Correct. Yes. More than just Bible verse memorization. Yeah.
Not less.
Not less. Correct.
But more.
More.
Right.
Yes, we want to care about more than that. The fourth one is conspicuous. So manifest blessings.
It's like a preacher came up with these so far that they're all alliterated.
Correct. These are not mine. These are actually Sean's. So I'm just reading them off.
I mean, I was mocking.
Correct.
That preacher person who feels like you need to start all the letters the same. Yeah.
That's right. So conspicuous, manifest blessings, right? We want them visible. We want them demonstrated. They're not just the secret joys in our heart, right? The blessings ought to be put out there and seen.
Yeah, I can't remember if I have gotten up on my exegetical soapbox before on the podcast related to Jesus saying that we're the salt of the earth. But almost every time that you hear somebody talk about being salt of the earth, they say that Christians are a preservative because, they didn't have refrigeration, blah, blah, blah. And so they'd put salt on meat and that would help it go from being so rancid so quickly. And so culturally, Christians are a kind of cultural preservative that keeps it from being as wicked as it possibly could be. And that sounds good. And I don't even deny that that was a typical use of salt, except that in the passage itself, Jesus said what the problem is with the salt, that when the salt has become tasteless, it's good for nothing and should be thrown out. So, tasty, Christians are to live in a tasty way, is a conspicuous way. Like, you can't avoid it.
Mm-hmm.
If you put salt on your yogurt, you could
Mm-hmm.
not avoid it. If you put salt in your coffee, you wouldn't like that. We're talking about putting salt on something that makes it more savory, more flavorful, pulls out the flavor.
Mm-hmm.
So we are to be living in a way that is more provocative,
Mm-hmm.
in a way that, makes others thirsty in a way, but again, more the taste,
Mm-hmm.
and it's supposed to taste good. And that is not just, again, me and my quiet time,
Right.
me in
Right.
private, me and Jesus.
Right. Well, and again, if you're even in talking about preserving culture, well, you have to have a culture to preserve. You have to have built some sort of culture. You have to have, founded it, and that a culture is much more again than just the quiet Bible time. That is the start, the foundation, but it covers all the ground. How families interact with one another, how kids and parents interact, even John the Baptist of bringing the father, turning the father's hearts to the kids' hearts to the fathers, parenting, marriage, business, all of these different aspects again ought to be conspicuous, ought to be manifest, ought to be tasty, salty. For even that the fifth C then is for it all to be compelling, for it to be jealousable and jealously provocative, to pull people in, for people to want more of that. When it's conspicuous, it ought to lead to it being compelling.
And seems like we would have a lot of overlap then with people who would find even what we've just described as compelling.
Mm-hmm.
Like, hey, I want to be with a group of people that are pursuing those kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
So forget whatever label. I mean, we do think that there are some nicknames that can help describe it in a quick way.
Mm-hmm.
But this kind of worldview, Weltanschauung, this kind of life operating system, these are the lines of code that we want to see running inside of the application of our lives,
Mm-hmm.
That produces a certain kind of person and household and church and even then city, location, those kinds of things.
Right.
And we think that it does require a lot of work, and also it's really good. That's the place of blessing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Even that sort of, people who are experiencing maybe a theological homelessness, so to speak, right? I'm kind of here, I'm kind of not here. Are there others like me? And that's what we're trying to say, yes. And we want to promote that more and figure that out more and live it out further.
Yeah.
So, All Our Years Conference, this is us exploring it. This is us teasing it. The potential idea is for a year from now for us to be able to have put something together. And we would love to hear people's feedback. So whatever you're listening this on, like, give us a comment, or you see us in person, talk to us in person. That is a stupid idea. Do not do that. We don't need more conferences. So next time you see us, tell us. Or you think it's a great idea, or you think you have some ways to make it even better, or to keep it out of the ditch.
You want to
Feedback.
sponsor it so that nobody has to pay for anything.
There you go. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
But feedback is what we want. We don't want to get too far and then it all was much stupider than we thought, or maybe much better than we thought.
It is interesting that conference also starts with C, just like those other 5 C's. So I mean, maybe that's a sign.
Oh man. Yes. There you go.
So I mean, so does crap. So I mean, it's not necessarily only one obvious way that the alliteration can go. But
Hey, if we're looking for allegory, we could make it mean whatever we want. So,
this is definitely true.
all right. So, yes, give us feedback or not. Either way, we're going to do something or we won't.
That's comprehensive.
There you go. That's right. All right. That's it. Out.
Good.